interrupt our programming. This is a national emergency. Important details will follow. The following message is transmitted at the request of the United States government. A foreign invasion has begun in the northeastern United States. At 10:17 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, several Russian fighter planes attacked several targets, including the cities of, but not limited to, Boston, Portland, New York City, Trenton, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and Scranton. The North American Aerospace Defense Command reports that a second and much larger wave of Russian fighter planes and bombers is inbound. The United States Air Force has been dispatched to intercept the incoming Russians, while the National Guard is working on those already in the United States. All residents in the northeastern United States should shelter in place now. All other Americans should remain vigilant and be prepared to seek shelter or evacuate at any time. Remember to keep all necessary supplies, such as food, water, clothing for a few days, medical supplies, and a battery-powered radio. Remember, in the event that you lose power, tune your battery-powered radio to 770 amp for information during this emergency. The President is currently being taken to safe shelter and is expected to speak within the next few hours. Stand by for this message. This is an emergency action notification. All cable and broadcast systems shall transmit this emergency action notification message. The station has interrupted its regular programming at the request of the White House to participate in the emergency alert system. During this emergency, most stations will remain on the air to provide news and information to the public in assigned areas. This is WNEP. We will continue to serve the Wilkes-Barre-Scranton area. If you are not in this local area, tune to a station providing news and information for your area. You are listening to the emergency alert system serving the Wilkes-Barre-Scranton area. Do not use the telephone. The telephone lines should be kept open for emergency use. The emergency alert system has been activated.
To the realization that careless spending and debt days are over. So basically, according to a recent threat assessment by the US Pentagon, Russia is expected to threaten the use of nuclear weapons against the West, including the United States of America, as sanctions and military action against that nation continue to take out a bite of the nation's ability to thrive. Russian Duma member, I'm not going to butcher his last name here, he has claimed that America will not retaliate. This is a high-ranking member of the political scheme in Russia. He has claimed that America will not retaliate if Russia fires a single ballistic nuclear missile at them, with casualties, he says, of roughly 10,000 predicted by the politician. The urging of action is in reply to claims that Western nations are acting, quote, on the assumption that Putin has no cards left in his hand. One potential card, he says, could be a nuclear strike at a Nevada test site, which he believes would not see retaliation from the United States of America. Now, you might have it ingrained in you that mutually assured destruction is a guaranteed thing, but it's not, because nations around our world, the governments around our world, they are, while overbearing in their control measures, they are acting on the behalf or at the will of their citizens. So when you have a largely armed and mostly volatile nation like America, you don't have the resolution of mutually assured destruction at a singular nuclear strike or a small nuclear event. Now, I'm not saying that Russia is going to do this, just that these are the types of madman actions that are being put on the table on both sides, on all sides. Look, China came out today after their discussion with US President Joe Biden, and China said that as soon as the United States of America gives weapons, gives money, funds this war against Russia, basically all hell is going to break loose. They're saying right then and there that just by acting through proxy. This isn't like Syria. And we've seen this warned over and over again. During the Syrian civil war and the proxy wars that were fought between the United States of America and Russia, you had both nations basically fighting against each other in a little bit of a shadow or a quasi, maybe a hidden war, where they were funding each side of the war. But there wasn't any real action that ended in large lives lost of the acting parties. Now you have the United States of America sending in weapons, sending in the grenade launcher, sending in the missile launcher, sending in all of these things that are going to strike, are going to target Russian soldiers. And in this targeting, it is going to take the lives of those soldiers. The Russian people are not going to stand for that, and they are going to begin to say, it's time to strike America. With sanctions still in place on Russia from Western countries, Putin has warned that these sanctions are an act of war. This politician, in an interview that was translated by MEMRI TV, says that until there is a physical demonstration of Russia's determination, America will perceive the position of Russia as a bluff. So they need a demonstration, he says. The most convincing demonstration would be the physical destruction of America's Defense Department facilities. I'm talking about facilities which international law grants us the right to destroy. You have to start to open up to the verbiage that is being used. Think about George Bush. Think about the actions that were taken to put us into the Middle East. Think about each of the actions that are taken before a war. Think about the verbiage that is used to ignite the call for war in Russia for the Russian civilians. They have to get people used to the fact that we are going to go to war. And in some ways, they have to get them to agree with those actions. And so they start to say things like, these people are a regime. Remember that the regime thing was like the key word of the 2000s when they said that if it's a regime, the American people were like, okay, go bomb them. And that was all that was said about it. Not you, not me, of course, not our family members that are in service. But that was generally the U.S. government was, as soon as they started throwing around the regime word, it was like, okay, we'll just go do it. It doesn't matter. That's a regime. And then you had the groundwork that was set up for the weapons of destruction that were supposed to be in the Middle East. And you have the groundwork that was set up, the verbiage that was used for Libya. And you have that same verbiage being used right now. You have Biden blaming Putin, saying that he is a war criminal. You have Putin saying that there are, facilities and overreaching. I guess I have to tiptoe around the real terms here, but they were saying that there are overreaching things that are happening in Ukraine that Russia needed to go in and safeguard. And so we have this setup. Right here, you have the politicians saying that they have the legal right to destroy U.S. Defense Department facilities in an act of war, whether there's human, civilian casualties or not. The Russian parliament member also alleged, and listen to this quote, take it for what it is. Remember, propaganda's on both sides, misinformation and disinformation's on both sides. This information comes from that politician that says the Russian parliament member alleged that the missile strikes could hit the laboratories that develop COVID-19. So we have a lot of emotion driving right now in their calls for war. The warmongering is heavy, and we have people starting to get up on it. Their emotions are getting up. And I've seen people on the channel. I've seen people in our local environment. We met people in different fields over the course of the last couple of days in the public, and they're all saying, bomb Russia. They're all saying, let's go to war. I don't see very many people saying, hold on, we don't want to send our servicemen and women over there. Let's focus on making sure that Americans are fed, that our economy is, working as it should. I guess that's because they know that America won't be fed and our economy will never work as it should, because they've put your great-grandchildren so far into debt that there's no way that they can peel their fingernails off scraping and getting by, trying to climb out of the debt hole that we have allowed the government to create for them. He continued, and I'm not going to go into this because he continues to talk about those laboratories or facilities. The coordinator of the National Liberation Movement in Russia says that naturally there will be no way back after firing such a missile. However, in this war, we shouldn't threaten with strikes or offensives on Ukraine, but with damage to U.S. territory. If we create for U.S. territory, say a risk of 10,000 casualties from a strike or even a weak missile, then the U.S. will perceive this as a threat of 10 million casualties. This is the American psychology, they say, how they think about their country. He warned that the missile could be a nuclear explosion, maybe not even a missile, at a Nevada testing site. According to him, this is kind of a perceived psychology, a radiological strike. Think about what they did with Hiroshima. That's the exact same mentality. The U.S. said, okay, we're going to send this off. No one else is going to do anything once you see this happen. If you don't want this to happen to you or continue to happen, you better just stop right where you're at. That's the thought process that's going into this, and that's a very real chance that Russia could do that, and they could send off a limited nuclear strike or even work through a proxy to allow it. Remember all of those news stories of years gone by where we were missing radiological materials that never showed up, but the news just brushed it right under the rug. Think about all of the radiation that could have been gathered in the cleanup of the Fukushima nuclear reactor dysfunction. Think about all of the radiological materials that could have been gathered to create an impromptu device that would cause massive amounts of harm and destruction in America and to the American people, and how they could just send somebody in through the open borders that we have on each side of this country, and how they could allow that to happen. That's the potential future that we face, and one we have to get ready for, and know that as soon as that does happen, the American people will get out their own whips and they'll say, let's go to war. Let's fight Russia. Hands on, up against it. And that's when we have world war. A lot of times we get local ground reports from members in our community all over the world that show just how bad things are getting in their area, including this report from Paul Bars, who is in the Netherlands, who has said that we have just been warned by our government that within 4 weeks we will no longer have sunflower oil. That is, again, our future. No wheat or low access to wheat, no cooking oil or low access to cooking oil. That's what's happening right now because Russia, Ukraine controls 30% of the wheat and up to 70% of some of the cooking oils. And so everything that you use, everything that you buy at the store that isn't a raw ingredient is going to go up in price. U.S. bond traders are sounding the alarm that the Federal Reserve's move to increase the interest rate is the beginning of the end of the market money, where they stress that this week's policy decision marks a long-awaited, they say, a very long-awaited indicator of economic hardship to come, in what they warn is a flashing red alert light that has been seen for the first time since the darkest days of the 2000 financial crisis. Their concern, according to an economic advisory team, is that the entire Western economy will buckle under the weight of monetary policy normalization. And this is due in part, they say, to the realization that careless spending and debt days are over. So basically what they're telling you is that because mommy and daddy government takes away the market's money and freedom of lending, because they do this, you're going to suffer extreme personal, local, and regional market and economic stress and a crisis event. This is a spoiled child. That's what we have allowed to the stock market and the entire lending market to become. And we had a great kind of pointer yesterday in a video, in a comment, where somebody said, the U.S. Is blaming China right now, saying that they have predatory lending schemes while this happens in the U.S. And I replied that, yeah, but because it's privatized, no one bats an eye. And that's exactly what happens here. Because we have allowed this blending of privatized and governmental funds to just bleed your future generations and to bleed all of the riches away from American soil, the future that we have is a dangerous one. Their concern is that we are going to see a complete market flip. According to the reports, indicators of oncoming continuity control measures and their economic suffering pains will continue to increase as inflation fallout from Russia's Ukrainian war continues to play out. They are in full mode, according to Diane Swank, the chief economist of Grant Thornton on Bloomberg. They are in full mode of trying to bring inflation down. The Fed is chasing inflation now. Remember that Swank was the one who predicted the U.S. economy will slow during the second half and is at risk of recession. Everything that you look to buy right now, all of the money that you send out every month, whether that's for taxes, whether that's for the food that you buy, the rent that you pay, your mortgage, your insurance. Look at what they're saying about life insurance. You know, it used to be touted big that a man of my age could go and get $15, $1 million policy because I have good health. I don't smoke. I don't drink. I don't, scuba dive or do any of the other things that they put on the, the red alert list. So I could go get $15 a month, $1 million policy. Well, now that there was a 40% increase in claims because of major, mortality risks over the course of the last 2 years, imagine what that's going to be in the future. And just that small blip, that 40% increase will take that $15, which you go, okay, it's $15. That's not very much. And it's going to send that up to what, $45, $85, $95? Just that small blip is going to cause a massive change in our economy. Think about what happens when you have a 50% increase in food. Think about what happens when you have a 70% increase in wheat. Each one of these things is going to be a compounding disaster, and it's going to get worse over and over again. There will be crumbles and ashes when this is over.